Yes.
Could you clarify what exactly you want for this concept? Because in the beginning of the instructions, you say you want like static HTML, you don't really need that until later. But then later you say like.
Yep. Yeah. I did want to talk about that. So say the application that we're playing around with here, the project that we've been working on this week, right? We have users, right, and we have movies, and we might have several relationships between the users and movies. We might have reviews, or we might have likes that relate. These are one-to-many, right? One-to-many. So it's a many-to-many relationship between users and movies, right? So the way the POC explains is that these are all entities, right, that need to be stored in the database, right? You need to store the users in the database. You need to store the movies. These movies have some information which is being retrieved from the cloud, from some API, which we are caching some information down here. We said that we would cache maybe the title of the movie, the IMDb ID, and maybe the poster, right? So one of the things that you need to build for those that are using APIs, right? Not everybody is using APIs, but if you are using APIs, you need to build a page like we built a couple weeks ago. That allowed you to search whatever it is that you're searching, right? And once you searched, it showed some summary of the search results, right? And I believe we built a couple of versions of this. One of them allowed you to, in addition, click on that particular domain object and display on the same page. Display the detailed information about that one particular element. Right? Remember we did this? I think we did it first using jQuery, then we did it again using Angular with no routing, and then we did it again using Angular but with routing. Okay? For the POC, I don't really care what this looks like. I suggest that you use a table. Right? I think it's the easiest way to render this. I'm not looking for Angular routing. It can all be in one single page like this, like we did a couple of weeks ago. If you prefer to split it into 2 pages, that will be okay too. The point of this, the point of the POC is to verify that you can go and fetch the data that you need, right, to fulfill your requirements, right? Can you go and and retrieve the data, bring it back, render it as a search result? Can you then giving a particular domain object, can you then go fetch the details of that domain object and then render a details page? Okay, so can you do that? So that's one piece, and I believe I had mentioned that that you can use as a sample. From the portal, I believe I have an experiment that you can use as a sample, right? This is an experiment that we worked on a couple weeks ago. Again, we did it first with jQuery, then we did it again with Angular. You can use this page as a starting point, right? And then customize it to whatever you need, right? Whatever your JSON endpoint is. Yes? So that's one part of it. Yes?
So if you're not using API, you can use like make your own JSON.
Yes. Yeah. So the other part of it is that also a demo we created a couple weeks ago was for each one of these, even for movies, you need a way for managing these movies, right? To make sure that if somebody likes this movie, right, somebody clicks on the like, you need a place to store that information, right? So this right here is all going out to the API, right? None of this is being stored on the server in your own database. But if somebody writes a review, or somebody likes it, or somebody rates your movie, you need a place to store that, right? You can't store it in IMDb. IMDb is not going to store it for you, right? You need to store it locally in your database, right? So you need to create a proof of concept that you can store that information locally on your server, eventually in your database. So what we did to try that out, we built a little CRUD table that allowed us to create movies, right? I think we had a plus here that allowed us to create a movie, right? And then it would render the movie. We also added an X to remove already existing movies, right? I think we added also a pencil to be able to select the movie, and then the movie would appear here. We could edit that movie and then do an OK to update that movie. So these are the CRUD operations that allow you to manipulate your data model, right? I think we only built it using Angular, I believe what the POC says is to use a table, right, to render your for each one of your entities, to render a list of your entities, be able to edit them, to be able to remove them, to apply all the CRUD operations for each one of the entities, right? You'll need to do one for movies. You'll need to do one for users, and for the relationships too, right? This you need to store somewhere, right? For the reviews, it would be something very similar, but in the reviews, you might have to say, well, you need to tell me what user and what movie, and then the review itself. So one option that you could do, these could all be input fields, but a better implementation might be that these are drop-downs, right? Drop-downs where you can select a user, select a movie, and then you can type here the review, right? And this would be a data view of all reviews, right? That makes sense? Right? You don't have to do navigation and routing and none of that, right? Eventually, you'll need to do that. What this allows you to do is exercise your data models. Will my data models, my array, my schema, the objects that I'm manipulating, is that going to be enough to capture all the information? Right? Same thing here. Is the API that I'm using and the query strings that I'm using, is it enough to be able to retrieve the data? And we'll have the data that I expect. Right? Also, it pushes you to think about the services that you're going to need, right? You're going to need a service. You're going to need a service that goes and fetches the data. You're going to need a service here that implements all those CRUD operations, right? That reads by ID, reads all of them, creates, deletes, updates. You'll need all those services to do all this, right? Those are services that you're going to need later on to implement your prototype and keep going. So this pushes you towards that without forcing you to think still what the layout is going to be. A lot of you are still deciding what the layout is going to be, right? What the look and feel is going to be. But this pushes you to have those services that you're going to need anyway, regardless of what your look and feel is going to look like, or regardless of how you're going to decide eventually how you're going to render all this and what pages and whatnot. You're going to need the same services. All right? Does this make sense? Yeah. All right. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so I worked a little more on the project, on my project that you can use as a template. Right, hopefully you'll be able to reuse some of my stuff that I'm working with a project that you can. It could be a starting point for you. What I added was that you can still log in just like we showed you on Tuesday. But now, movies that I've liked are now showing up in my profile. So if I went and searched for a movie and I clicked on that on the like button of that movie, it now shows up in my profile. Remember, the profile should be where I show all the personal information about that particular user, right? The currently logged in user, and then all the information that is related to that user, right? So if that user wrote a review, or if a user likes a particular movie, or if a user is following another user, right? All these relationships about that particular user need to show up somewhere, right? I need to be able to see all those relationships, right? I created those relationships. They need to show up somewhere. I suggest that a good place to put them is in the profile, right? I log in, and then I can see everything about me, right? Not only my personal information, but I can see the movies that I like, the movies that I've reviewed, right? Any people that I'm following, any people that are following me, any messages that anybody's sending me, right? Anything that is related to me should be available somewhere. I suggest that the profile would be a perfect place to put it. So right now we only created this, a likes, right? A user likes a movie. So if a movie searches for Star Trek and they go to that movie, they can click on that movie. Right, it doesn't do anything. Over here, something that's missing is that this icon should change, right? If I click on it and I like it, it should highlight somehow, right? It changes its state. If I go back to my profile, I now like two movies, Batman Begins and Star Trek, right? If I then navigate to that movie that I just liked, if I click there, you'll notice that down below, it says other users that like this movie, which is me, right? It lists me as a person who likes this movie. But if I log out and I log in as Bob, and I search for the same movie, Bob doesn't like any movies. But if I search for the same movie, right, and now Bob can see that Alice likes this movie. But if Bob likes this movie too, if they go to their profile, they'll see that now Bob also likes Star Trek, right? If they go back to Star Trek, the details page, you'll notice that now both Alice and Bob are listed. See that? Right, so here we have a two-way relationship between users liking movies. So you need to keep track of, from the point of view of a user, what movies does that person like? And you need to keep track on the other side, right? Given the movie, what are all the users that like this movie? See that? Right? And a many-to-many relationship, like we're showing here, is a classical way of keeping track of that kind of information, right? But in a MongoDB, in a non-SQL database, we have other options of how to capture this information. Okay. So this is a classical way. So let me just talk about that a little bit. So the classical way, oops. Uh-oh. The classical way of capturing this type of information is as follows. Right? So you have a collection of users, right? And you might have here a user 2, and you might have several movies out here, right? So you might have, so this is in my users collection, and this is in my movies collection. And you might have movie 1, movie 2, and movie 3. Okay, so the classical way of capturing relationships between these two is to have in between a mapping table, right? Something like user to movie mapping table that keeps information such as user 1 likes movie 1. Okay, user 1 also likes movie 2. Right? User 2 likes movie 2, and user 2 likes movie 3. Okay? Right? What this relationship allows us to do is allows you to navigate from either side of the relationship. Right? Given a user, I can use this table to find out all the movies that a user likes. Right? Giving you user 1. If I log in as user 1 and I'm in the profile page of user 1, right, I would list the movies that I like as movie 1 and movie 2. Correct? If I instead log in as movie 2, as user 2, I would list movie 2 and movie 3. Make sense? Right? But from the movie's point of view, right? If I go to a particular movie, so this is movie, and this is movie 1, right? And I navigate to movie 1, this will tell me that just user 1 likes movie 1. Right? But if I go to movie 2, it'll tell me that user 1 and user 2 like movie 2. If I go to movie 3, it'll tell me just that only user 2 likes movie 3. Make sense? Everybody okay? All right, so this relationship here, this mapping table in between, is one way of capturing this, and MongoDB certainly supports this. You could use this technique in MongoDB that we'll see in a couple of weeks. You know how to do this. This is referred to as a mapping table, or also a many-to-many relationship, and you capture it this way: 1 asterisk and asterisk 1, meaning for each one. For one of these on this side, there are many of those over there. There it is, right? For one user 1, there's 2. See that? Same thing here, right? For one of these, user 2, there's 2 also here, right? Or there could be many. So that's what this means, right? For every one of these, there can be many of those. And from this end too, right? Given one of these, there can be many of those, right? So for movie 2, there's these 2 over here. See that? Okay? That is what this means. For any one of these, there's many of those. And it allows us to answer these kinds of questions. From the user's point of view, I can see all the movies. And from the movie's point of view, I can see all the users. Very good? Another way of capturing this, the same information, right? An alternative way to capture this is that because MongoDB is going to allow us to store in the database JSON objects, entire JSON objects we're going to be able to store in MongoDB, right? And so it's not flat records like in SQL, right? In relational databases, they're not flat. They're objects. Objects can be nested, right? They can be hierarchical. Objects can contain other objects. Objects can contain arrays of objects, right? So it's much more expressive what you could store in a JSON database, right? You can store an entire object. So because you can do this, this user 1 can be fairly complex. For instance, one of the things that I can store in user 1, I could store an array of all the likes. This could be an array where I can store all the IDs of the movies that user 1 likes. See that? So user 1 likes movie 1 and movie 2. See that? And user 2 likes movie 2 and movie 3. Not the entire object, but at least an index, right? The ID IMDb of the movie, right? Could be a reference to all those movies. From the movie's point of view, I can do the same thing, right? I can say that movie 1 is the likes. Who likes movie 1? Oh, just user 1 likes movie 1. And who likes movie 2? Oh, user 1 and user 2, right? And movie 3, nobody likes movie 3. Oh no, yes. user 2. See that? This is an alternative way of capturing the same information. You see that? Right? Which this option was not available in the relational database, right? Because in the relational database you have, these records are flat, right? You can't create hierarchies. The only way to create hierarchies in relational databases is to have foreign keys, right? To have records that relate to other records that relate to other records, and you create the hierarchy amongst many tables, and then you have to join everything together, right? In JSON databases like one we're going to look at when we come back from the break, right? You can store entire objects, and these objects can have arrays of other objects, right? So we're going to use this as an alternative way of capturing the same information. Notice that it captures the same exact information, right? It's just encoded differently, right? Okay, so this is the way I implemented it here. Not with a database, right? With JSON objects, right? And the only difference would be that once I have the database, instead of storing it in memory like I'm doing right now, it'll be stored in a database. Okay? All right. So I wanted to share with you this implementation that allows you to capture a relationship between the various objects. Okay. Okay. All right. So we were looking at on Tuesday. We were looking at my Git repository, showing the implementation of the project as several commits. So let's keep going. Let's see. Let's see how far we went last time. We did the search, right? We did all this, right? OMDB service. How far we got into? So, so we certainly, yes. Oh, yes, thank you. Oh, it came off. There we go. Oh, it looks like it's still recording me. Why are you still recording me? No, screen share. There we go. Okay. All right, so let's see. Let's go back to the issue, the commits, and OMDB service, older. Let's see, added search, provide home. Okay, so we did this, right? We showed this how to. Yeah, we covered the resolve. Did we cover the resolve? We did, right? That we were protecting the profile page so that it forced you to log in, right? So that you could not go to the profiles unless you logged in. Did we do that? We did that, right? Okay. We also covered using the same technique to be able to provide the home view and the search view with the session information. Did we cover that? Right. Let me just go back up a little bit. Edit search, navigate, create user, log out. We did log out. We added the registration page, create user, client, provide home. Create a server model. Yeah, we protected the profile. Okay, we did that, right? We used the protect the profile, right? Anybody had a question on that? Does this make sense? Remember, we're using the resolve to protect the profile. Do we need to cover that again? Everything okay with that? Yes. Yes, certainly. So if you remember the profile, we protected the navigation to the profile like this, right? We got the current user from the scope, right? And if the current user was null, we kicked you back to the home page, right? Because we didn't want to allow people to navigate to the profile page unless there was somebody logged in. Remember that, right? We had done this in the previous implementation, and we had mentioned that this was a poor solution because what if you have a whole bunch of pages that you want to protect, right? And you would have to replicate similar code like this all over your controllers, right? Check to see, the controller checks to see if somebody's logged in. If not, they don't let you go through, right? And so this would make it a nightmare to maintain. It says, oh my goodness, just for each control I need to do this. Instead, security should be a platform-wide solution, right? That you have a single place that you implement the security, and it makes it easy to maintain, easy to configure, and that's what we did. Right? What we did was, first of all, we refactored get current user in the service, right, in the client, instead of storing the current user in the root scope. Right? Instead of doing that, we are now fetching the current user from the server, right? And remember that the server is maintaining the current user in the session. Remember that? That you do remember, right? That we're storing the current user in the session, right? So we're no longer relying on the current user. We're not relying on the root scope. We're always going to go fetch it from the server. So what we did, instead of having the controller for the profile protecting the page, what we did is says, no, let's do it in a single place. Let's do it in a single place. Let's create a function. Let's create a function that is responsible for going back to the server, checking to see if somebody's logged in, right? And what we want to do is we want to intercept any communication and says, if you try to go here, right, go first check to see if somebody's logged in. If somebody is logged in, I'll let you through. If they're not logged in, then I'm just gonna not let you through. Okay, so that's the basic logic. Yes, okay. And so here's the function that goes to the server to get the current user. There it is, right? And that's asynchronous. It's an asynchronous call. So it's using this call right here, right? The HTTP get logged in, and returns a promise. See that? It returns a promise right here. So right now I'm using this then to register a callback that's going to be invoked when the callback comes back, right? When the call to the server comes back, that call, that response is going to either have a current user or not, right? This data here is going to have the current user. That user is either going to be null because there's nobody logged in, or it's going to be an object of representing the current user that's logged in. Everybody okay? Right? And so here's a logic that says, well, if there's a current user, then I'm going to cache it locally on the root scope. I'm going to cache it. If not, then I'm going to send you to the home page, which is basically the same logic we had earlier, right? Logic we had earlier. But we want to take this logic and make it so that it's reusable, right? It can be reused to protect any page, right? In particular, the profile page. Okay, so the way to reuse this, is to put this whole thing in a function, and then configure the page that we want to protect, right? Like the profile view, right? We're going to protect it by saying that this page has dependencies, right? This page has dependencies, meaning these dependencies need to be resolved before I let you through, right? If all these dependencies say okay, then I'll let you through. If any of these dependencies say that it's not okay, I'm not going to let you through. Okay, right now we only have one dependency. Okay, this is a map. It's a map of dependencies, and the way and these dependencies can, know all about asynchronous calls, right? These dependencies might be asynchronous. I need to go fetch things from the database, right, to make sure it's okay, right? So the way they work is that these functions that you configure here, they're meant to receive an asynchronous promise, right? They're meant to be receiving an asynchronous promise that allows these resolves to register for the callback and receive either a reject or a success, right? Whether it's successful or not. Whether it's if it's successful, it'll let you through and go on your merry business to your profile page. If it's rejected, then it will not let you navigate to the profile page. Okay, so that's what we did here. We created a promise object, a deferred object using the AngularJS's promise API, $Q. That's the promise API, and the way it works is that you create a deferred object and you return a promise immediately. Okay, and then notice that this wraps. It's wrapping an asynchronous call. This is asynchronous, right? This is going to go off and do something, and I don't want to wait for it. That's why I created the defer object, and right away I return a promise, right? And then at a later time, I will notify whoever's waiting for this to come back. I will notify whether it was successful or not. If I resolve the promise, then whoever's waiting for me will see this positively, and in this case, it'll let them through to the profile page. If instead I reject the promise and says, no, sorry, something went wrong, I can't let you through, okay, then it will stop you from navigating to the profile page. Okay, right? That's the way it works. If we do a deferred resolve, it'll let you through the profile. If instead we do a reject, it will not let you go to the profile. But in addition, we are sending you to the home page. That's why if I log out, right, and I try to navigate to the profile page, it doesn't let you, right? It's going out to the server. Notice how it's going out to the server. We can look at the network here, traffic. We can clear this, and if I go to profile here, notice the traffic here. Right, it's checking logged in. It's checking logged in, and it's coming back. Wait, it's coming out with nothing, right? It doesn't have a response, right? But instead, if I do log in, and now I try to go to the profile page. Notice that it comes back with an object. You see that, right? So that's what this if is doing here. This if. That's what this if is doing. If there's a current user coming back, I will resolve, cache the current user. If there is no current user, I'm going to reject it and send you back home. Make sense? So now any page I want to protect, I just need to add this resolve in front of it. Right? I can configure all my protected pages using this resolve. So we use a similar technique. We use a similar technique for the home page and the search page, right? What we want to do is for the home page is that notice that if I go to my home page and I'm logged in, right? If I go to the home page, notice that the home page greets me. It says, "Welcome, Alice," so it knows who I am, right? But if I log out, notice that it does not greet me because it doesn't know who I am. Make sense? Right? So we would like to provide the home page and other pages with some session information, like who's currently logged in. Right? And it used to work fine because we would store the current logged in user in the root scope, right? So when you went to the home page, you would see who it is, right? But this only works temporarily, right? If you refresh the page in the home page, you would lose the whoever's logged in, right? Because we were relying only on the root scope, correct? Instead, what we want to do is that if you're in the home page, we always want to go back to the server to see who's logged in instead of having it in the root scope. We don't want to rely on the root scope, right, to see if anybody's logged in. So what we could do in the homepage to check to see who's logged in, what could we do? Well, what we could do is in the controller for the homepage, we could go fetch the currently logged in user from the server, couldn't we? Right? And once we have the currently logged in user, then we could customize this homepage. But what if I want to do the same thing for the search page or the details page or a whole bunch of other pages? I would have to, again, copy and paste this code all over, right? Go fetch from the controller, go fetch the currently logged in user. If they're logged in, then do some customized content. Instead, a better solution is to do something similar that we did to protect the profile page. We're going to have the home page and the search page. We're going to put a resolve as part of those pages. Okay? Meaning these resolves are going to intercept the communication, and they're going to intercept the fact that you want to go to the home page. They're going to intercept the fact that you want to go to the search page, right? And before they let you through, they're going to call this function get logged in. And get logged in is going to go fetch the current user. Once they get the current user, they're going to put it in the root scope, and they're always going to resolve. Notice that they're never going to reject you. Right? I'm not going to ever stop you from going to the home page. You can always go to the home page, but by the time you get to the home page, we have resolved the fact that there is a current user or not. By the time you get to the home page, the current user exists or not. Right? It's either null because there is nobody logged in, or it's an object that can be displayed. So by the time you reach there, the user exists. Same thing for the search page. By the time you reach the search page, there will be a current user either logged in or it'll be null. So we're not going to deny you going to the search page. It's just that by the time you get there, you'll have the current user either defined or not, right? And then you can do all sorts of things, right? For instance, in the home page, something that I like to do is that if there is a current user, right? I like to show the current user a customized view of the homepage. Like, for instance, the latest movies that particular person has reviewed, or the latest movies that person has liked, right? If nobody's logged in, instead I'll provide a generic homepage, right? A generic homepage that, since I don't know who you are, it'll be very generic. Same thing for the search page, right? In the search page, if I know that you're logged in, and you execute a search, right? What I might do is that once I receive the results from the search, what I might do is that since I know who you are and I might know the movies that you like, I'm going to highlight those movies, right? Maybe provide you with a button so that you can unlike those movies, maybe, right? But if I don't know who you are, I can't provide those links. Make sense? Right? Okay. All right. So we're providing the home and the search views with the current user from the server. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. Search. Okay, we did this. I think we went over this, right? Being able to search. Right. In the search view, I added an input field and a button to search. We covered that last on Tuesday, did we? I thought we did, didn't we? Anybody? No? We didn't? Okay. All right, then let's take a look at that. So in the search view, which is this one, right? It's search. I add an input field and a search, and then let's go newer. Added a search controller that is going to handle the event of clicking on the search button. Right. So here's the controller. Right. For the view, I'm declaring the controller, and the view is going to be able to reference that controller using the model variable. Okay. So using the controller as syntax. Everybody understands the controller as syntax? That I know we did cover on Tuesday. You going to go over that? Everybody okay? All right. Don't forget to load the controller in the index page. And here's a boilerplate controller for the search page, right? It declares it, right? And here's the implementation. Here's using John Pappas' style of declaring the view model, the declaration of the event handler, right? The init, also, and here's the implementation of the event handler for searching the movie, right? So nothing new there. So everybody should feel fine with that. Oh wait, so okay, so now 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 that we have the controller for the search page, we know we need to go fetch the data from OMDB, and to do that, we're going to use, right, we have the controller, right, we have the view here. So here's a user interacting with the view interacts with the controller interacts with the service, and the service interacts with the cloud, right? So we have the view, we have the controller. Let's now focus on the service that's going to talk to the cloud. So here's a service implemented as a factory, yes, and it's going to have it needs to implement two functions, right? One, search by title. Give me the title of a movie, I'll go fetch the movie. And it has to also implement search by ID, right? The searching by title is going to respond with an array of movies, but if I give me ID, I'll return just one, right? So let's do this one first. Search movie by title. So the controller was just echoing the movie, right? When we clicked on the search, but now it's going to use the OMDB service that we're just writing, and it's gonna call search movie by title, providing the title of the movie as an argument, right? And the service takes the title, and right now it's just echoing it to the console, right? But in the next slide, anybody interested in building slides? It's actually, I think it would be much easier than we think. It'd be very interesting. So here it is. Here it is. The service is going to use the HTTP service. So the OMDB service is going to use the HTTP service to make the invocation to the OMDB API. There it is, right? And the controller is going to receive the response as a promise, and is going to send the data that is coming back from the server to the view model for rendering, right? Now that we have the data, we can actually render it, right? The view can now take the data that's coming from the server, and it's going to render it using a table. And we did this already, right? So I'm not going to spend too much time here. The only thing that I'd like to point out is notice that we're using this ngIf. See that? This ngIf. So what this says is that the following, this div will only exist if model.data is truthy, right? Meaning that model.data is not empty, right? It's not undefined. It's not null. It's not false, right? It actually has data. We could have used instead ng-show, right? It implements this, right? Notice that down below, I don't see the search results. You see, I don't see it. So this is the button right here. This button is this button right here, right? But when I type Batman, right, and do the search, notice that down below we get a new content. Search results appear after I do the search results. Yes, right? And that's implemented with this ngIf. If there is a data, then I show the search results. See that? But I could have achieved the same effect using ng-show instead of ngIf. ng-show says, show the following content if this expression is true, right? Whereas ngIf says, add this following content to the DOM if this is true, right? If this is truthy, right? It's different, right? And with ng-show, this div is already in the DOM, right? And it uses display none or display block to show the content or hide it. Yes? Whereas ngIf, the way it works is that if this is false, the entire DOM object for this div is not added to the DOM until the expression is true. You see that? So we're not littering the DOM with things that we're not going to show, right? Only if this is true, then the entire thing is added to the DOM. So fundamentally different how they work. Same effect, right? But this one is so that we don't litter the DOM. Anyway, in here, we're just going to iterate over the search, which is the array of the 10 movies, right? We display the poster and the title and the IMDb. So I'm not gonna, you know that already. We did this a couple weeks ago. Or the details page. So what we want to be able to do is that if you click on a movie, like Batman Begins, and if I click on that, I want to make that title a hyperlink. If you click on it, we're going to navigate to a details. You see that? There it is, details with the ID. See that? Right? I create a details view. I think it's down below here. Where is the details view? There it is. Just right now, it just says details. Just this details, right? I added to the route, right? I added to the route in the config. I also added to. Notice that this link details was not there before, right? Notice that it wasn't there. Only when we clicked on it, only when we clicked on the link, the detail links appeared, right? To achieve that functionality, we have it right here. It says show. I'm going to show this link only if the URL contains details, right? Notice that in the other ones, I used if the URL is equal to profile, is equal to search, whereas here I'm saying contains details. See that? The reason is that the URL is all this. This is the URL, right? This whole thing. It contains the ID. You see that? And that ID is always going to be different, right? As I see different movies, correct? Right? So that's why I say if it contains the details, then show the link. All right? What else? In the search view, I made the hyperlinks out of the title. So now the titles are hyperlinks, right? And they navigate to the details and then the ID of that particular movie. See that? Everybody okay? Yeah, we did this a couple weeks ago. So this should be review for you. So notice that that when I go to the details, I need to fetch the information, right, about Batman, right? About the ID that you're passing me as an argument, right? And the way we're going to do that is in the controller. I'm going to add a controller. And I add a controller, which is referenced as a model. And I should never forget to load the controller. Okay, so here's a boilerplate controller that doesn't really do anything yet, right? For the details, what that controller is going to do is going to retrieve the IMDb from the route parameters, right? From the path. And now that it has the IMDb, what it needs to do is go fetch the details, right? Retrieve the details from the API. So to do that, right? If you remember, the OMDB service had a functions to be able to retrieve movies by title. We're going to add an additional API that allows us to retrieve a movie given an IMDb, right? So given the IMDb, the controller is going to pass that IMDb and it's going to go and fetch the movie by IMDb and it's going to return a promise with the data, right? So the controller, the details controller, we're going to inject that service into the controller, and we're going to use that service to go fetch a movie by IMDb, and once we have a response, we're going to display it. We're just going to display it in the console. What really we should do is pass it to the view. Right? We're going to pass it to the view so that we can render it. Right? So instead of just logging it, we're going to send it to the view model, right? So that the details page can then render the title, it can render the poster, right? It can render the plot, and then it render the actors. Yes? Right, which is all this, right? It's the image, the plot, the actors. Later on, we're going to add this, right? Other users that like the movie. Everybody okay so far? Am I going too fast? Is this okay? I haven't lost anyone. Am I going too slow? Can I speed up a little bit, or is it okay? All right, let me know, please. Okay, speak up. Okay, so now I want to favorite the movie. I want to say this particular person likes this movie. So let's do that. So we're going to implement this button here, right here, this button right here. So in the controller, we're going to add an event handler so that when you click on this, right, we want to pass. Yes. Oh, wow, that's weird. That's not what I see. Okay. So it might record weird. It's actually going to record whatever's on my screen. Huh. The code, you can see the code though, right? Yeah. Okay, you see the code. Yeah. So eventually, it's going to look like this, right? The controller is going to use two different services, right? It's going to use two different services. It's going to use the OMDB service to talk to OMDB API. But an OMDB API has its own database, right? Whatever it uses to store. We're going to use another database here, which we don't have yet. That's going to be Mongo in a couple of weeks. But we're going to have our own Node.js here, a Node.js that's going to store this in the MongoDB. So we need to talk to the Node.js, passing it information about, certain user likes certain movie, right? And we can always store it in our own database or in our own object model, right? Our own hierarchical objects, right? So we need another service that will allow us to tell the controller, right, to go and store that information in the Node.js. So we're going to have an OMDB service that talks to the cloud. We're going to have another movie service that allows us to store information about movies, such as this user likes that movie. Right? We need to store that somehow, right? We need to, if they're just searching and looking and browsing, there's nothing for us to store, right? It's only if they review the movie or if they like the movie that we need to remember those kinds of things. So what we're going to do is that if they like a movie, we're going to have to go fetch in our movie collection to see if we have that movie stored in our database, right? Do we have, if they like movie 1, we're going to go fetch in our collection, do we have movie 1 in our database? If not, we're going to have to create a record for it, right? We're going to store some information here. We'll store the title, the poster, the IMDb, right? We're going to cache some information. Not everything in the movie, right? If we want the details of the movie, we're gonna go. We have the ID to go fetch the rest of the information if we ever need it, right? Okay, but we're not going to store this information. This information is going to come handy later on when we need to render the profile, right? In the profile, right, we're going to have some private information, but then we want to render, for instance, all the movies that we like. Right? And we would like to have maybe a thumbnail of the movie, maybe the title of the movie, right? But maybe not more than that. We're going to fetch this information from here, from our database, okay, from our own database. And and some might argue that really the only thing that you need is the ID. You don't need anything else, right? Because with the ID, I can always go to the API and retrieve everything, right? I can retrieve the title, the poster, I can retrieve everything. But here would be very expensive to do that. So imagine you like, a dozen movies, several dozen movies. The API that we have would force us to go for each movie that we have the ID. If we want the title and the poster, we're going to have to go to IMDb API, a couple of dozen times, one per movie, to retrieve the poster and the title. That would be very expensive, right? So instead, we're going to cache that information in our own local system, in our own local database, right? Right? Well, definitely we need the IMDb, right? That at a minimum, that's what we need. But we're going to cache a couple of things there just to optimize the performance of this page, right? So we're going to implement here in the movie service, right? Given a user ID, retrieve all the movies that this person likes. Okay, everybody with me? All right, so let's implement this. Well, we don't have the database. We're going to have this locally on our server. Okay. All right, so let's implement this this likes button. The implementation is that in the controller, well, so in the view, I'm going to add a button. There it is. It's blue. When I click it, it's going to invoke the controller, the favorite function. It's going to pass it the IMDb of the movie that we're favoriting, right? Then in the controller, we have the event handler right here. And it's implemented down here. So I'm just verifying that I'm getting the IMDb from the client, right? All right. Then now that I have the button, right? Let's wait, what's this? Oh, okay. So in the details controller. In the details controller, right, in the details controller, I need to know, not only do I need to know the ID of the movie that you're liking, I also need to know who's currently logged in, right? Because I need to make the relationship between the person who's currently logged in, right, and the ID of the movie. So I need to know both things, right? So I can tell the server, hey, server, this user whose ID is blah, 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 whatever, 123, likes this movie, T125, whatever, okay? So the details page needs to know who's currently logged in, right? So to do that, in the declaration of my route, I'm going to say that, you know what? Before you get to that route, or before you display the page, go fetch who's currently logged in. Right? That's what we did for the home page, right? And for the search page, didn't we do that? Well, I want it also for the details page, right? In the details page, I also need to know who's logged in. So that means that by the time I get to the controller, the current user will already be in the root scope, right? Right? Either the root scope, the current user will either be an object because somebody is logged in, or it will be null. Okay. So if you do favorite, and you pass me the IMDb, I'm going to check to see if you're currently logged in. Right? If there is a currently user logged in. If there is somebody logged in, I'm just going to display the current username and the IMDb. If there's nobody logged in, I'm going to kick you back to the login page, which makes sense, right? If I'm looking at the details of a page, I'm browsing and I'm looking at a whole bunch of things, but if you try to comment, or you try to rate the movie, or you try to like the movie, I can't do that unless I know who you are. So what I'm going to do is that if there's nobody logged in and you try to do those things, I'm going to kick you back to the login page. Make sense? Right? And we can demo this. Right? If I log out, oh, okay, there's nobody logged in. So if I click that, notice that it kicks me back to the login page because nobody logged in. But instead, if I log in as Bob, right, and I search, and then I notice that it will not kick me to the login page, right? Then I can go to my profile and see that I like both movies. Make sense? Right? So let's see how we can implement that. Okay, so now that I know the user, current user, and the IMDb, it's time to let the server know, hey, this user likes this movie. So how do we do that? Well, let's chat about that. One way to do that is to provide a URL. Oh, first of all, I'm sorry. There's we're gonna implement a service. Right, we said this, right? There's gonna be an OMDB service that talks to OMDB, and we're gonna have a separate service that talks to our own service model, right? In our server, and that's gonna be in the movie service client. In there, we're going to create a function called set user likes movie, right? That the controller is gonna provide. It's gonna provide the ID of the user, and it's going to provide the ID of the movie. And this is going to be responsible it's this one, right? It's the movie service. It's going to take the ID of the user, the ID of the movie that they like, and it's going to notify the server that, hey, this user likes that movie. Okay? And the controller, it's going to use the movie service to pass it the ID of the current user and the ID of the movie. Okay? So on the server side, we're gonna have to listen for that incoming data, right? So what the service is gonna do, this service over here, this service is gonna send the data to the server, right here. See, it's posting to API project user, says this user and user ID likes this movie in the ID. See that? Right? And it's a post, right? Because we're creating new data, and we're using the HTTP. On the server side, if you remember, our top level server app, only had one model. It was a user model, right? And it had one service. It was a user service, right? The user model was being used to maintain an array of users, right? Remember that from Tuesday? Right, we had an array of users, and the service provided all the posts, the puts, the gets, the deletes to manipulate that, right? To register people, to log in, to create users. But now, we're going to need other services. We're going to need the movie service. We're going to need several other services. To do this, I'm going to rename these two. I'm going to rename these two, instead of just calling it model and service. I'm going to call them user model and user service. Yes. Okay, to distinguish from this brand new movie service. I'm going to create a brand new movie service. That movie service is going to listen for an incoming post that's going to tell me that this user likes that movie. I think a better URL might have been user ID likes and then the ID of the movie. I think that would have been a better URL. Would have been more explicit. Okay. Although this kind of shows that there's a relationship between these two, right? Although right now there's only one relationship, so it's okay, right? When you start having many relationships, then it makes sense to use the name of the relationship instead of just movie, right? But right now we only have one relationship, which is likes. But when we get to reviews and ratings and other things like that, it'll make sense to distinguish them, right, by the name of their relationship. Okay. All right. So now the server is receiving the user ID and the movie ID in the parameters of the post. and I'm just displaying it in the console just to verify that I'm receiving the right information from the client. Again, I'm taking baby steps in each commit. Hopefully, makes it easier for you to digest, in small bites, small chunks. And again, I'm trying to make it so that these eventually could be slides, right? That you can consume on your own at your own leisure. That explain how this was implemented. Okay. Yeah. So just like we have a user model that is responsible for maintaining the list of users and manipulating, adding to more users, removing users, finding users, the same, right? We need to be able to find movies, add new movies, retrieve movies, delete movies, right? So for that, we're going to create a brand new model called the movie. Excuse me. Oh my goodness, thank you. So here's the movie model that's going to be responsible for maintaining an array of movies, okay, a collection of movies, and we're gonna pass it to the movie service because the manipulate that model depending on the gets and puts and posts and deletes, right? And here's the implementation of the movie. And right now, the movie model, the only thing that it has is being able to find a movie given a movie ID. Right? It's gonna keep track of the movies in this local variable movies. Right? It's a variable that's instantiated on the server, so it'll have the lifetime of the server. Right? When the server gets rebooted, all this goes blank. Right? But as long as the server is running, we're going to keep track of all these movies in memory. Okay. What else? Okay, so find movie by IMDb is going to take the ID of the movie, is going to look for it in the array of movies. If it finds it, it's going to return that movie. If it finds it, so basically what we're trying to do is, this person likes the movie, so they're passing along. User 1 likes movie 1. Right? That's what's passing to the server. And the server needs to go here and says, okay, do I have an instance for movie 1? Do I? Is it there? If it's not there, I'm going to need to create it, right? So first, we're implementing the fact that we can search for a movie by ID. Okay? If it can't find it, it'll return null. The service is going to take the IDs of the user and the ID of the movie, and it's going to use the service to create that relationship. Okay. What else? Hello. Why are you not? Oh. Okay. So on the service side, I'm going to use I'm going to find the movie. The service finds the movie from the movie model, right? It checks to see if the movie exists first, right? Does the movie even exist, right? If it exists, it asks, does it have any likes? Does it have any likes? If it doesn't have any likes, I'm going to initialize the likes to an empty array. Right? Basically, what we want to be able to do here is that we want to say, movie 1, and then an array of likes. We're going to store here the IDs of the users that like it. So in this case, it would be user 1, user 1. Yes? We'll put it in that array. Okay. If we find the user, if we find the movie, we're going to push the user ID in the likes. Right, so now the movie knows that so-and-so likes that movie. Make sense? Right? Go back. Oops, what's going on? If the movie is not there, I need to create that movie. I need to create it here. So we're gonna add. In the movie model, we're going to add functions, and in the API, functions to be able to create new movies, create this brand new movie. And right now, the implementation is a poor implementation. Right now, it only creates movies by the IMDb, right? So we create an object that the only thing that it's storing is the ID of the movie, right? But remember that we also want to store what else? The poster, right? We want to store the title of the movie, right? So we're going to come back to this and we're going to make it a little more realistic, right? We're going to revisit this in a minute. But create movie takes the ID of the movie, it creates an instance of that movie, and then pushes it into the local array of movies. Yes? If this were a database, you would not have these local arrays, right? You would be inserting this into the database. Yes? Right? Once we insert the movie, we return the movie. Return the movie. So now the service can find the movie if the movie doesn't exist. So the service is gonna look for the movie. Right, so if the movie doesn't exist, it's going to use this brand new create movie, right? Create movie to create the movie, and it's going to check to see if it has any likes. If it doesn't have likes, then it creates the likes, empty likes, and then it pushes the ID of the user. Make sense? Right? Oh yeah, I think I had an extra user ID. Yeah, I had an extra user ID in the find movie by IMDb. I don't need the user ID, so I just removed it. Okay, so we have this part, right, where the movie knows what user likes it. But remember that we need to update also the user, right? The user, we have user 1. We need to be able to tell the user 1 that it likes that particular movie. It has to, because the relationship is both ways, right? This is going to allow me to render the details page, right? For a given movie, I want to list all the users that like it. And this one's going to help me render the profile page, right? Given a user, what are all the movies that user likes? You see that, right? So I'm gonna implement on the server side, being able to retrieve this user by ID, which I think we already have. Find the user by ID, and once we have the user, we're gonna add the movie to that user. Okay. So on the client. Sorry, on the server side, we're going to the movie service. Before, it was only receiving the movie model, right? Because the movie service was only updating the movie model, right? It was adding new movies, finding movies. But the movie service also needs to manipulate the user model, right? It needs to tell the model, right, which movies a particular user likes, right? So the service, right, receives the user model, So here we have, right, this was the that I'm done with the movie, right? I told the movie what user likes it. Now it's the turn of the user. I need to tell the user what movie. So I'm going to look for the movie for the user by ID. If I find the user, if that user doesn't have any likes, I'm gonna initialize it to be an empty array. I'm gonna push the ID of the movie onto that user. So now they both know about each other. The user knows about the movie, and the movie knows about the user. See that? They both know about each other. In the user model, we had implemented already find user by credentials. We had created create a user. Now we're gonna add a find user by ID, right? Which basically just iterates over all the users, comparing against the user ID and returning that particular user, or null if it doesn't find the user, right? Oh, okay. Let's see. All right. So in the client, on the client side, in the details controller, if you remember, when you clicked on the favorite button, we were passing just the ID of the movie, right? But this is not enough. To what we want to be able to do is pass the entire movie object to the server, because we want to extract the plot. Well, actually, no, not the plot. We want to extract the poster. We want to extract the what else? The title, right? We want to cache that in the database, right? So the only thing that we were passing to the server was just the ID of the movie. Okay. Really, we want to pass a whole bunch more. So in the details view, we used to just, when we clicked on the favorite button, we used to just pass the ID of the movie, right? Instead of just passing the ID, what we're going to do is pass the actual lesson. We're going to pass the entire movie object. Okay, so the controller needs to change. There's the event handler. Instead of receiving the ID of the movie only, it's going to receive now the entire movie object, and it's going to pass it along to the service as a movie object. And the service, this used to be the URL before, right? Right. It used to just say send to the server. So and so likes movie so and so, right? But we're going to change it a little bit so that not only are we passing the IDs, but now we have a whole movie, right? Now this should say movie. Where is it? Oh yeah, movie. There it is, right? So we're going to pass, the URL is going to be the same. The URL is going to be exactly the same, the ID of the user and the ID of the movie, but we're going to pass alongside the URL, we're going to pass in the body of the HTTP request, we're going to pass the object, the entire movie object, because we want to extract the URL for the poster, and we want to extract the title. Right? We want to cache that in our database. Okay. So on the server side, oh yeah, I changed a couple of things here. On the user model, the user service, you know, I had all these URLs nicely mapped to equal functions: logout, logout, logged in, logged in. Except this one, I forgot to change. Find user by credentials. I think login is such a better name for that function, so I changed that. All right, so added OMDB API. OMDB API. Oh, right. So all my URLs were API project register, API project logout, API project everything. But because I have a whole bunch of projects, right? I want to be able to distinguish, right? So each project will have its own registration, its own logout, its own login, right? Because I have so many projects. So I just added OMDB to all my URLs to distinguish between. So this was some maintenance. So nothing there of interest. All right, so so what I want to be able to do now that the movie knows which users like the movie, and now that the users know what movies they like, I want to be able to render the movies that I like, right? If I go to my profile, here's my profile, I like to render all the movies that I like, right? So how do I do that? What I did is I created a new, in the user service, I created a new function, right? A new API called get profile. And the profile is more than just the user information, right? The first name, last name, email. It's the information that I need to render the entire profile, right? It includes not only the personal information about the user, it contains lots of other things, right? All the things that I should render in the profile, such as movies you like, the people that are following you, and all that information that I would need. So I'm gonna capture all that in a function, an API called get profile, and the controller in the profile controller, in the init function. Notice that the init function wasn't really doing anything, right? So the profile loaded and it wasn't really doing anything. So what we're going to do is that when the profile loads, I'm going to use this brand new API in the user service to invoke retrieving the profile, right? So this is going to go out to the server, retrieving all the information for that particular person. So there it is. So there it is. The service, the client service, is going to go out to the server. It's going to retrieve the profile for the currently logged in user. It's going to pass the ID of the currently logged in user. It says, I want the profile for this particular person. On the server side, we're going to retrieve, we're going to listen in for that incoming GET request. So they're asking for the profile for that particular user ID. We're going to implement it in the function profile right here. We're going to extract the ID of the user from the parameters, right? And once we have the ID, we're actually going to retrieve the information we need. Okay, what do we need? We need to, here in the in this object, right? We have user1 likes, right? And then the ID of the movie that they like, right? The movie knows who likes it, and the user knows what movies they like. You see that? It's both ways. So we need, right now, this is only the ID of the movie. It's only the ID of the movie. We need the entire object, right? What do we need? We need the title of the movie. We need the poster of the movie, right? Because we want to render that in the profile. So let's see. So in the profile implementation on the server, I'm going to use the function that we created earlier that finds the user by ID in the model, in the user model. And now that I have the user, the user has this array of likes. Yes, this has this array of likes, and in there is the ID of the movie. Correct. What I need to do is iterate over those IDs of the movie, right? And then go to my collection of movies and find all those movies, right? By ID. I need to retrieve all those movies. I might have hundreds of movies here, right? But the user only likes a couple. I need to find all those movies, retrieve those movies from my collection, and then create an array of objects that have those movies, and then send it back to for rendering in the profile. So my user service, right, the service that is retrieving the information about the profile, not only does it need to be able to find users, it needs to find movies, right? So notice that the user service, it used to only receive the user model. See that? So that it can find users and whatnot. We're going to also pass it the movie model. Not only the user model, now it's going to have also the movie model, right? Because it needs to query the model for movies for a particular ID. Yes? So the service now receives not only just one model, now it has two models, right? One for the movie model and the other for the user model. And in there, I renamed a couple of things here. So now in the profile, it's not just model, it's user model everywhere, right? So I replace those names. Okay. So what I want to be able to do is grab all these IDs, all these movie IDs, right? It's an array of IDs. And what I want to be able to do is pass this to the model, to the movie model, and says, hey, here is a collection of IDs. Fetch me all the objects that match this ID. Okay? In a query, in a database query, would be something like select movies where movie.id in, and then the ID, and then a set of IDs. Correct? Right. So same thing here. Right, so I'm going to create a function called find movies, plural, by IMDb's, plural. So this function is going to iterate over the IDs. It's going to iterate over all the IDs in an array, and then as it goes through the IDs, it's going to find the particular movie by ID. Right? This retrieves the ID, right, and it fetches that particular movie by ID. and then it pushes it to a local array of movies. So movies at the end, this movie array is going to be all the movies that the person likes. See that? Okay. All right. On the service side, I first retrieve the user. Once I have the user, I retrieve their likes. Here are the IDs of the movies. I pass those IDs to the find movies by ID, and now I have the list of movies that that user likes. So I'm going to store it in a separate array, user.movie likes, right? Because I don't want to overwrite this, right? Because likes contains the IDs, right? So perhaps a better name for this property would be likes, right? And then IMDb's, maybe that would be a better name for the property. Whereas this is the actual movie objects, right? The movie objects that contain the poster URL, it contains the title and the ID, right? So now that I have the ID, the controller is patiently waiting. The controller is patiently waiting for the data to come back from the service, which we wrote earlier. And the service returns it as a promise. The controller listens for that promise, and the profile object is in the data, and we send it to the view for rendering, right? And when it renders, right, we have a div under the profile that's going to iterate over those movie objects. And it's going to render a panel, right, like this. These are panels. It's going to render a panel for each one of the movies that the person likes. So here's so movies I like, right? It's this one right here, movies I like, and this says where is the iteration? ng repeat. There it is. So create a whole bunch of panels for each movie that we like, and the heading of the panel would be the title, and the body will be just the image. Right. So here's a heading, right, and here's the panel down below, and they're both hyperlinks, I believe. Well, I created the hyperlinks later. What I want to be able to do is that if I click on that title, or if I click on the image, right, I want to go back to the details page, right, like this. If I click on Star Wars, right, I go to the details page of Star Wars. See that? Or if I go back, I click on Star Trek, I go to the details for Star Trek. Again, remember, this is one of the features in your project, in the requirements, right? So to implement that, in the panels that we just rendered earlier, we're going to create a hyperlink out of the title and a hyperlink out of the image, right? And they both point to the details view, passing the ID of the movie, See that? Right? And there it is, right? That's if I go there it is, the ID of that movie, which is different if I click on the other one, right? The ID for that other movie, right? What else? I think that's it. Rename user APIs. Oh yeah, I didn't like the name for this API, set user likes movie, so I renamed it to just user likes movie. What else? Also on the client, I forgot to rename. I renamed it on the server, but I had not renamed it on the client. So find user by credentials, I renamed it to login. Also, instead of create user, I changed it to register. Okay. And I also changed the function name. So instead of find user by credential, I changed it to login. What else? The controller also, I used user likes movie. I just did some renaming. That's it. Okay. Find users that like this movie from controller. So what I want to be able to do now is the opposite, right? if I go to a movie, I like to be able to find the users that also like this movie, right? It's the opposite, right? So in the details controller, I'm using one service to go fetch the details of the movie, right? Which is this top half of the page, right? All this top half all the way up to here, right? It's coming from where? It's coming from the OMDB API, right? And I'm using the OMDB service to do that, right? Which we covered earlier. But the bottom half here, which right now is just other users that like this movie, where's that coming from? That's coming from my service, right? That needs to come from my database, correct? Plus, down here, what else are we going to add? We're going to add comments, right? If people are reviewing this movie, or ratings, things like that, right? All those things need to come from our database, right? So the details controller not only is fetching the details page to be rendered at the top of the page, but asynchronously, it's also fetching find user likes, right? Meaning find users that like this movie, and I pass the ID of the movie. See that? Right? So this is doing two queries, right? Simultaneously. It's going out, right, the details page, but it's going out to the OMDB to fetch that movie, the details of that movie, but at the same time, it's going to go to my database to retrieve users that like this movie. Okay? On the movie service, right, we just added find user likes, and we're going to go to the server. We're going to go back to the server. We say movie, here's the ID, I want the users. Right? Given the movie, I want the users. Right? Now remember, there's only one relationship that we're keeping track of, right? Likes. Okay, so I didn't bother to put likes here, but later on, since we're going to have several relationships, we're going to have to be able to distinguish between these. So what do you want? Which relationship do you want? Which users do you want? Here are the users that like the movie, right? Later on, we're going to want reviews. So this will read, movies, IMDb, reviews. I want the users. I don't, right? Okay. So on the server, we're listening for that incoming URL, and we're implementing it right here. We're not doing anything with it yet. We're just retrieving the ID of the movie, right? So we need to find the users that like this movie, right? We need to say, now that I have the ID of the movie, find me that movie. Find me that movie. And one of the arrays in there is this array, right? This array, the likes, the users that like that movie. And that's the IDs. Those are the IDs of the movies. So, okay, so I have the users. The IDs of the users. And that's an array. I have to fetch them as objects, right? So in the model of the user, we're going to add an additional function. We already had find user by ID. We need another one, a higher level one, that says find user by IDs, plural. Give it an array of users, retrieve me objects of those users, right? So this one is going to iterate over the arrays of user IDs, and it's going to find each user, and it's going to push them into an array of users. It's going to return those users. On the service end, we're going to pass the ID of those users to that model, and now we have the likes of those users in the movie object, right? In the movie object. Now that the movie has the objects, right? The movie service is going to pass the data, the movie object, to the view, and now the view down below is going to iterate over those likes, right? Displaying the username. You see that? It displays the username. Okay. Now those usernames, what I'm working on now is that now that I have these users, one of the requirements in your project is that if I click on those users, I should navigate to those users' profile, right? So if I click on Bob, it navigates to Bob's profile or Alice's profile. I don't have that yet. Okay, I'm working on that. Right? Notice that that if I click on Alice, see what's happening? We have profile / Alice. See that? Profile / Alice. Or if I click on Bob, it'll say profile / Bob. So in this controller, the profile controller has to be smart, right? If you don't pass me no one, then it must be that you want the currently logged in user, right? If instead you pass me a user, then it must be that you want that particular user, right? So that controller needs to behave differently. Also, it needs to be smart on what to show and what not to show, right? Because I might want to protect certain information. I don't want to make it public, right? I don't want people to just be able to come to my profile and see everything. I don't want people to see my email. I want people to see my phone number. I don't want people emailing me and spamming me or calling me, right? So this profile page will have to be a little smart, right? If you're looking at your profile, the currently logged in profile, then yes, you can see all your information and you can edit it and you can do all sorts of things, right? If instead you're looking at somebody else's profile, then certain things might be private and not show those things. Make sense? Also, if it's my profile, I should be able to maybe have here and unlike my movies, right? I should be able to click here and unlike my own movies. But if somebody else is looking at my profile, they shouldn't be able to unlike my movies, right? They shouldn't be able to edit anything about my information. If they click on like, they're liking it for themselves. They're the ones who are liking it for themselves, not editing my profiles. You understand? So it has to be smart about that. And that's what I'm going to add later this weekend, and I'll present it next week. All right? Again, feel free to access and use whatever you find in the GitHub for your own use. Does everybody know where the GitHub? I think I sent it in a Piazza. Everybody okay? Where the source code is? All right? Okay. All right, I'm gonna leave it here, and we have an office hour after class, so I'll see you there. See you then. All right, thank you.